Okay, let's talk about applying to Telefilm. All right, so I'm in Canada and I am putting together an application to Telefilm Canada for funding for our production of The Quiet Canadians. We are applying under the regional production schedule, which is for budgets under 3.5 million. And I won't get into financing and what we're asking for and everything. Just to be clear, the film's budget or the budget that we are applying under is the regional budget, being as that we are under 3.5, but we are over 1.5. We essentially become eligible to apply for up to 1/3 of the budget that we are aiming for this production. So that sets the landscape. One of the things that I've been working on today is the director's vision. Based on the program guidelines, there are some recommendations that I have to enhance your application. Thinking about your director's vision, you want to emphasize the uniqueness of your project, highlight the director's personal connection. So in my case, I'm highlighting my personal connection to the themes and to the subject matter of the film, asking the question, why this story, and why now, and why me? And that's basically what you're trying to ask with all of your questions as you put them into your director's statement. You want to talk about your cinematic style, what style you see for this film, and rather than getting cute and trying to look like you're an auteur of something, what you really want to be doing with your cinematic style is justifying the choices that you plan to make. Thinking about your film cinematically, why film it this way? And as a director, you're trying to justify and you're trying to argue your choices to the Telefilm panel, but also just as an aside, this is a good thing for you to get used to. Is it's easy to say, oh, I want to shoot it, I want this to be cinematic like this particular cinematographer, or like this and this and this, but without actually knowing why that's important to you. So for example, if you were making a Bourne movie, you'd have a cinematic style to that, and it would be justified by the nature of the film. Like, what type of film are we making here? And then why this particular style? It isn't a bad idea to have a visually dynamic document like a mood board or something like that to accompany your director's vision. There's no real place for it in the Telefilm application, at least not as far as I can tell, but I do think it's worth having it on hand as a way of informing how you approach your director's vision and all the other elements of the director's vision. One of the things that they talk about in terms of community engagement, they're asking for a community engagement plan. There are some actual documents you can use for this, but one of the things to maybe include in this is collaborative storytelling, how the project's going to engage with the community around you, with historically underrepresented communities, and how it all ties together in terms of the Canadian narrative and the Canadian cultural narrative. How is your film going to avoid using harmful tropes, highlighting proactive measures to ensure accuracy and to avoid stereotypes, particularly if we explore sensitive topics or cultural representation. Very important for Telefilm Canada to see where your film fits into the cultural landscape of the country. This isn't about being woke or about anything else, but about representing fairly what Canada, the Canadian experience and the Canadian cultural experience. You want to mention what unique elements you're planning to have, and any experts or any consultants that you're going to bring in to accurately portray that aspect of your film. But that can involve everything from, if you're going to deal with a specific subject matter in the film, you're going to want to bring in some kind of a consultant or some kind of an advisor who's going to be able to make sure that what you're doing is appropriate and works for and represented accurately. With regards to an espionage film, you're looking for experts. You're trying to make sure, especially, to help it stand out, you want there to be a certain level of expertise from the Canadian side of like, what is Canada's involvement in the espionage world. Now, obviously, if you're pulling together, like we are for Quiet Canadians, you're crafting a narrative. This is not based on a true story. We're taking some liberties, obviously, to craft the story, but it is important for us to remain authentic and true to the content that we're expressing. We don't want it to appear as though Canada is somehow misrepresented in how it is portrayed in the espionage world. And then, of course, with your community engagement, you're looking for what are the benefits to the local community? How will you support the communities that you're filming in? Examples of this can be, making sure that you have a plan for how you plan to hire local crew, how you're going to maybe showcase areas that are not often filmed in, and so on. Some other things that Telefilm's looking for are sustainability and green practices. So there are guidelines of ways that you can support sustainability and green practices in your film, how you plan to do that, and making sure that it's reflected in the budget that you have, and also in some of the game plan, and maybe even some of the approaches that you plan to take in terms of how you plan to work with sets, with locations, and with vehicles and transport. Then they want to have an audience engagement and discoverability plan. What's your target audience? Define your target audience, define the psychographics of your target audience. What's your marketing approach going to be? And there is a template for this. They really want to hone in on what is the plan for you, because what they want is not necessarily to have financially successful films, although that is definitely a goal of Telefilm, is that they want to make sure that it is a successful film. So is it going to appear at festivals? Is it going to be distributed properly? Is it going to have a chance at hitting eyeballs? What makes this film something that's appropriate, and what makes this film something that will be seen by people? If you have a distribution plan, and if you don't have a distribution plan, then what is the plan for festival circuits, partnerships, trying to get into the Canadian distribution landscape in terms of theatrical and or television. In Canada, there's lots and lots of opportunities for broadcast television and streaming. You do want to look at, how are we going to represent diversity and inclusion within the film, and also in the practices of how we make the film. So how we deal with underrepresented voices, intersectionality, incorporating elements of Canadian multiculturalism, bilingualism, and all that kind of stuff. Understanding that we have two official languages, Anglophone and Francophone. Are there ways that we can incorporate those into the story without it being a matter of dropping these cultural bits there just to check boxes? I mean, there should be an organic process to all of this. And there's a few other points with regards to Telefilm that we want to incorporate in order to make the package stronger, so that Telefilm sees this as an investment that has a high potential for success. This exercise is partly about trying to get that funding. Of course, that's really important to us, is to get that Telefilm funding. But even if we're not successful in getting the Telefilm funding, the exercise of putting this package together, including all the elements that I discussed, what we're including is also a budget justification. So how can we make a spy thriller for the budget level that we're talking about? How we plan to film it in a way that uses the budget smartly. And the great thing about that, of course, is that we have 13 Miles, which we made at an ultra low budget level to show that we have demonstrated this approach before. Obviously, on The Quiet Canadians, this will be on a much grander scale. It's good to have that example in the past, and now what we can do is go through, as we're explaining the budget for the film, explain how we plan to execute a film that's going to take us across Canada and is going to not be shot at one location, and how are we going to incorporate stunts, and how are we going to incorporate special effects into the film as needed. And that's all in our package and how we put it all together. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is make the package strong and make sure that Telefilm sees it as a fit for its program. We want Telefilm to see this as a natural fit for for a film that they want to fund and that they want to get behind. Because ultimately, in the end, this becomes a partnership. I mean, anybody who's giving you money for a film is looking to create a partnership where both sides are supported and both sides get something out of it in the end. And that's what we're aiming to do with our Telefilm application. The application's open at the end of January, and so this is sort of front and center on our mind right now. More on this soon. Thanks again. Let me know if you have any questions on Telefilm as we're kind of going through that process. And of course, once we're finished, be happy to share more videos on what we've gone through in applying for Telefilm funding, and also just grant writing in general. If you're anywhere in the world, grant writing can become a thing, even in the United States, where it might not be a government grant, but it could be a private foundation grant that you're applying for to get some funding for your film. And really hones in the practice of developing different types of pitch packages and pitch assets based on who you're trying to pitch to. It's very different pitching to Telefilm than it is pitching to a distributor, than pitching to an investor, and then also to pitching a crowdfunding video. You're creating different assets with your film, and each one kind of complements each other, but there's no one size fits all, and you always have to see your attachments and your package as an ever evolving list of assets that you're building to make your film stronger and stronger and stronger, make it and give it the best chance of being not only a successful film, but being a well-made and really entertaining and fun and good movie. I will talk to you tomorrow.